The book lay flat on the bar, so Anna tipped it upward to read the spine. The day before, Johnny had gone through the newspaper in 5 minutes. He had started this novel in the morning and had nearly finished it. Johnny pushed the book back down, then turned the page. Anna leaned close to Johnny's ear and whispered, "Mary Shelley, is it? Research?" Johnny winked at her, then continued reading. Anna ran her fingers through his hair, over his left ear, and felt the bumpy, curving metal form less than an inch in diameter. Her invention had saved his life, but Johnny could no longer speak. He could nod and shake his head, so they enjoyed simple communication. He helped with schematics in the basement. With his skills, he could have been working directly for Morgan's automatons, but clearly he preferred partnering with Anna. Yet speaking and writing language remained beyond him. Anna went back to the center of the bar and took a moment to assess the room. Carla might need help with the customers, or a table might deserve a visit from the parlor to the dam. Past the stairs stood Lucky and Dixie, 2 security automatons. Several more of Anna's girls leaned on the second-floor banister, gazing down at the patrons waving and blowing kisses. At the back of the stage, Patty, a buxom blonde dove in a fancy blue dress, played the piano. Meanwhile, ginger singer Nate Levy and his musical group Whiskey Zombie Collective tuned up violin, bass and banjo, guitar and mandolin. The musicians frequently played Anna's. Hi guys, that was a reading from a not yet released book by the name of Bodacious Creed from today's interviewee, which is Jonathan Fesmire. Jonathan is a really good guy. He's one of the really good ones. He's a podcaster at times. He is a blogger. He runs the Wild Steampunk website and podcast and does a lot of things. And we have a really interesting conversation today. Originally, I was thinking we were going to talk about steampunk and how to brand yourself, since I hadn't reviewed any book of his. But we kind of go everywhere, talk about writing and background and stuff like that. So that's really good and it's really interesting. So we talk a little bit about how to make it in this crazy world of writing and what that all entails. So it's a good time. Listen to it. Just want to kind of put it before we start. I just want to talk about that we have a second podcast out. It is called The Wrestling Guild, where myself and Nick Abtahi talk about and review Impact Wrestling now, since they have gone into kind of a new era with a new old ownership. And it's interesting because there's a juxtaposition there, as Nick knows nothing about wrestling beforehand. I mean, he's heard of it, but not Impact, and me, who's been around for a while and watched it. So it's actually kind of an interesting thing. So second episode is already up. Look out for it on SoundCloud. We'll have links and everything in the show notes. I would recommend that you check out Jonathan Fesmire as well, and all the things that he does. Also, those will be in the show notes. The music today is provided by Crail and Disfigure, and we thank No Copyright Sounds for providing the music. So let's get into it, and I'll see you on the other side.
That's at least something. So you got a taste of what the book is going to be.
Yeah. And what I'm really interested in is talking about, because it feels a little bit like we're both maybe trying to accomplish the same thing with what we're doing, writing, spreading the good word of culture, whatever it may be, through these new platforms that social medias and blogs and all of this really are. So I was kind of interested in getting your take on all of that, and also in fact about steampunk in general.
Yeah.
So if we start with maybe like the steampunk part, is that something that's always been part of your creativeness, or did you come from somewhere else
to
begin with?
Yet?
Yeah, we're recording. So
okay, okay, cool. Um, um, well, I mean, steampunk hasn't been around. I mean, for as long as I've been around. So, I mean, I always liked. See, where to start with this? To answer that question, I was into. At least, not like always into, but when I would see things that. Okay, I can think of two movies. There was. I can't remember the name of it. It was so good. It was a movie kind of based on The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, but it was with H.G. Wells was actually a character in it, and so was Jack the Ripper. And Jack the Ripper comes to the future.
Yeah, I've
And
heard of that. I think I've heard it mentioned, but I don't know the name of it. No.
oh, it was so good, and that's kind of steampunk. It took place in, whatever, 70s or early 80s or whenever the movie came out, because they came to the present. Um, but it definitely had that kind of Victorian vibe. And then there's another time travel movie. I can't remember the names of these movies. I should look them up. There's another time travel movie with Christopher Reeve where he mentally tricks himself to going back in time.
Okay, yeah, that one I don't know. Sounds like a Ray
It's
Bradbury story I read
it's like
once.
it's a love story. This old woman comes to him and says, "Come back to me." Yeah, this old woman comes up to Christopher Reeve's character and like she's really old and tells him, "Come back to me." And so he's like wondering what is going on. So he starts researching it, and he like finds this evidence that he actually had been back in time with her.
No. Yeah,
And
I
he's
saw
able
that
to
rings a
travel,
bell.
and he's able to actually travel back in time mentally. He somehow like convinces himself, and he goes back in time, and they fall in love, and they're really happy and stuff. And then he sees, and he accidentally brought with him a penny from his own time.
Okay.
And so when he sees that, it sort of reminds him he's not supposed to be there,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and he ends up going back to the present. Yeah, I don't want to. That's giving away a lot already. But so she's kind of in a bit more of a, I don't know what era. I want to say kind of Victorian Edwardian
Okay.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then I got into steampunk in the '80s, and not steampunk. I'm sorry, cyberpunk in the
Mm.
late '80s, early '90s, and once I kind of discovered steampunk, I just thought it was awesome. But I really got into it about 2010.
Yeah. Because I mean, I love steampunk too, and I came into it very late too. Actually, I came into it through the adventures of Luther Arkwright and well now later the comic book Granville by Brian
Oh,
Talbot also.
wow, I gotta look those up. I'm not familiar with those.
Yeah, The Adventures of Luther Arkwright, very, very good kind of Alan Moore style graphic novel about that
Awesome.
the universe is like built up to in different dimensions and history changes throughout those dimensions. So in like one dimension there's like David Bowie is the Prime Minister of England. And then there's one person, Luther Arkwright. There's only one of him. All other people, they're different copies, different versions, and he's the only one that can travel through those different
Okay.
dimensions.
Okay.
But it's very nice. Granville is very good. Brian Talbot overall, I can recommend, especially his Alice in Sunderland. Very good
Uh-huh.
stuff.
Well, that's
I
cool.
don't
Yeah.
know how big
Huh.
he is as a, but that's how I got to steampunk, and then I kind of read, I don't know if you want to call Philip Pullman's his Dark Materials steampunk, but I've heard it referenced to
It is
that.
to a degree. Yeah. Yeah. In some ways, The Wizard of Oz is steam, or at least the books, and I read those a long time ago. Don't want to sound like she's super old. I have a 22-year-old daughter, so when she was a kid, when she was like 4, 5, 6, I read the Oz books to her,
Mm. And I think
and
that happened. My parents read the Oz books, or my mom, and I mean they're a lot darker than the movie was, and I think it stuck with me a lot.
oh yeah,
And I read a lot of Enid Blyton,
uh,
which is similar to Oz, kind of like around the same time period as well.
yeah. But you've got I mean, it kind of starts with the Tin Woodsman, but later on you've got TikTok, who's very what I would call steampunk,
Mm,
you know.
yeah.
Uh, and it's definitely, and he was writing it during that late Victorian, early Edwardian era.
Mm.
So,
Do you think it takes a lot of
I wouldn't
research.
call that steampunk, but it's got elements,
Yeah,
and it's a lot of the feel of steampunk. So.
yeah. Do you think it takes a lot of energy and kind of research to write steampunk? If you were to be a
I,
novice at it or want to get into that genre?
I don't think you have to know everything about it. I think you need to know have a good idea of what it is and have a good imagination so you can take it where you want to take it.
Mm,
Um, so primarily it's about what if in, what if the kind of steam based technology uh, was able to do more or like really took off, or it's also you think of it as sort of um, think about what people in that era were extrapolating about what the future might be like,
mm,
and that's kind of steampunk. I mean, and that's why Jules Verne and H.G. Wells are so proto steampunk, because they were dreaming up technology like time travel and these and traveling to the center of the earth and these amazing submarines and stuff that were very and mechanical creatures that had that kind of really like aesthetic with a flourish that
mm.
steampunk has. Um, and they were supposing it would actually work on steam technology and things like this. So, and then what would a world look like with that kind of technology?
Yeah. So,
So,
so was it when you started writing when you were because I think when I read on your page your website that it's something that you've been doing
a
for
long
quite a
time.
while. Writing is something, and I think a lot of people will say that writing has always been a part of my life, um, whether it's not true or not. But when you decided like this is what I want to try to make a go of, was steampunk the natural like
No,
launching off point?
because that was in I started like really. It wasn't. I mean, I'm 47.
Hmm.
So I've been writing since like kind of like really into writing since I was like 10 or 11, and I wanted to be a writer. And so through in my teens, I wrote a bunch of short stories. When I was in high school, I wrote a uh, for my creating writing class. First semester, I wrote a novelette. Second semester, I wrote a novella. Um, in and after college, I wrote lots of short stories and sent them to publications. But I initially was writing fantasy.
Hmm. I think a lot of
So
us do. I think a lot of people who that go into genre fiction will start either in horror or in fantasy.
yeah, it could be.
And because I think those are two basic elements that you don't need maybe to know so much about. I mean, fantasy, the rules are very very open. You can write about swords and you can have
Yeah.
dragons or not. You talk about I think somebody once said when I was studying literature at college that when Tolkien said this is what an inn looks like, that's basically what every inn looked like in fantasy for the rest of
Oh
time
yeah.
immemorial. So when you read a fantasy book and it says it's an inn, everybody knows exactly what the inn
Everybody
looks
knows
like.
kind of what it looks like. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's the same a little bit with horror because it's such a basic element. When I
Uh,
teach my students in high because I teach at a high school and I teach English class and I say you're going to write a short story, horror is always the theme we use
okay.
because it's always something that they can relate to. Not I mean when you're 16, 17, you might not have had that big love that you can
Yeah,
relate to.
that's true.
So when
Yeah.
I started writing fantasy as well, and I fancied myself that this is what I wanted to be. And I then kind of, as I grew older, I said like I don't know if I really master it to that level where it
Yeah.
needs to be that people would want to read it.
Yeah, the thing is, like you said, like fantasy. Once you really start writing fantasy and start learning about it, you realize you actually need to have rules, just like in any other genre. You know, um, chalking things up to magic will get you only so far if you don't know how the magic of your world really works.
Yeah.
And so and so that's why often they'll talk about you need to decide what the price of magic is,
Mm.
and things like that. So,
And I think that's
um,
what makes Ursula K. Le Guin such a great fantasy author compared to other authors who also use magic.
yeah,
Not saying
or
that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman aren't great fantasy authors, but their magic is very basic. The way they use magic is
it's very well. I mean, they started off writing books based on Dungeons and
yeah,
Dragons, so that would kind of make sense. I mean, the price of magic is, in D&D is more or less like you memorize a spell and then once you've cast it, you forget it.
yeah,
you know, whereas I don't like that so much as for stories. I think that if you memorize a spell, you're going to know the spell, but it's going to take some kind of energy from somewhere.
yeah.
And that's what you're expending, and you have to replenish in some way, and that's and so a lot of people, I mean that's where you have like mana coming into the picture and things like that. Although people can use different things, I think somebody used blood as the price of magic.
It's an interesting,
Yeah,
it's an interesting aspect, definitely.
yeah,
And I think that's what as I grew older and started reading other fantasy, you know, out of, you kind of go out of the realm. You read, Abercrombie and other people. You understand
uh-huh.
that this can be so much different.
Yeah,
There's such a different dimension to it. It doesn't have to be all these long, complicated names like Salvatore likes to use, or even, I don't know, as advanced as Stephen Donaldson does.
yeah.
And I think that's
And it can be very raw and real too, like A Song of Ice and Fire,
mm,
or so which there's a price for everything in Game of Thrones.
yeah,
It seems like so, and I think one of the reasons that is such good fantasy is because it feels so real.
mm. And I would say that, well, I mean, and now we're kind of drifting off topic here, but
Yeah, we're off, yeah,
but it feels, and I think this is good because this is what this podcast is about. It's basically just about, two people
okay,
who enjoy culture of different kinds, especially the genre fiction kind, talking about it. To me, Martin might be a little bit too close to reality sometimes for my liking. Not
yeah,
saying that, not taking anything away from him as an author at all, because I love Fever Dream and Wild Cards.
uh,
Um, but I find that it's maybe a little bit too close to just being more historical fiction set in a made up world.
yeah. I can see that. I love it though, but I can kind of see that in that um, he skips around characters a lot, and there's so much going on that it's more history. It feels like more history than story.
Yeah,
So I can kind of see that. Yeah, I've heard other people say that.
yeah.
So
So when you went into when you went into steampunk, is that what you said, that this is what I want to do? This is what I want to be identified with as an author, or as a person out on the cultural market, so to speak.
well, what happened is I kind of stepped aside from writing for a while, and I got a degree in animation and visual effects as a 3D modeler,
Yeah.
my master's. And so while I was doing that, we had to come up with a. So the final kind of project for master's is a thesis, but the thesis for an animator or someone who does 3D modeling is a demo reel.
Mm.
Is your demo reel to show to businesses? So we needed to come up with a story idea as that was kind of the background of it, so or like a world or something
Mm.
that was cohesive. So like my models would all kind of fit together in the same theme and go together. So I actually came up with Bodacious Creed doing that. I wanted to do steampunk. I wanted to do something steampunk. I thought that'd be really cool, and I wanted to do it in the Wild West. So I started with that, and then my instructor pushed me to kind of tweak it a little bit more, and so I came up with the zombie angle, um, which actually comes very actually came very organically from the whole thing. So when you see how my zombies work, it's very organic to the whole setting. Um, and so so I came up with the characters, and then the title, the name just came to me. I like woke up one day and had the name in my head, and I thought that's already got to be the name of something. That's why I thought of it, because it's really cool. And so I looked up Bodacious Creed online. And I'm like, wow, that is not the name of anything. It's just it's a phrase, but I haven't So like I'm taking it, I'm using that. So so I did so a couple years later, I decided I wanted to write it. I was ready to write it as a novel, and to like really get back into my writing. So that was 2013. So I started the demo reel in 2010, and 2013. I decided to do that, and I was really interested in Kickstarter at the time, and I thought, why not kickstart the novel to see if there's any interest in it out there, if people would be into it.
Mm.
And I also realized that by getting people sort of involved like that, I could actually get people's input into the plot, and that would get them invested in it too, and that would be a fun thing to try.
So was it just to go into the Kickstarter thing? Did you have like a fan base? I mean, how did that work? Because I mean, I've seen other authors like Michael Sullivan, who just kickstarted like his 10th book in the Rhaenyra series. And he has like a deal with a publisher. He has a publisher, but he decided to do this through Kickstarter. So obviously he got funded right away.
Yeah.
Or like a band like Black Lab, who was looking to fund their 5th album, where they already had like a public. How did that work for you?
I didn't have. I mean, I had some fans. I definitely had some fans for my fantasy novels and stuff. But I hadn't been really building up my platform to that point. And so I actually read a really good book about Kickstarter, which I can't recall the name of off the top of my head. If people want to email me and ask me, they can do that. But I can't recall it. It's a really good book on Kickstarter, though. And I basically followed the instructions in that to the letter.
Okay.
And so it had that talked about figuring out how much you're going to need to break even, and to make sure that that's the amount that you ask for. And then so it's a lot of things in there. So I used that and just kind of plugged it all over the place, on social media. So there are lots of groups on Facebook. I had really cool rewards. Including the ability for people to have input into the book.
Okay, yeah.
So, and that ended up being actually working out really well for this one, because I had the basic idea. I knew the kind of the beginning of the story. But I also knew, and I've done improv and stuff before too, so I knew that, and I put, books and stories together, and, so I knew that I'd be able to put all the elements together and make a good story. And so I did the Kickstarter before I'd even started writing the book. I had notes, and I had the demo reel and everything, and I understood the characters and stuff. But and so I got people who got to name characters, and one guy wanted to be a character in the book.
Okay.
So I'm like okay, he said, can I do that? And he's my biggest backer. So he backed it for quite a bit. And he is one of the and he plays, but there's a character in the book named after him, entirely based on him, who's one of the major players in the story.
Well, I mean, that's pretty cool, and it must be pretty cool for him too.
Yeah. He's like, I've always wanted to like be this kind of a character in a book. I'm like, okay, he's a super cool guy.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah.
I just wrote like this short kind of Lovecraft horror story, um,
Huh?
kind of based off of Pickman's model. It was for like an anthology. I just thought I'd try to send it in, see what would work and stuff like that. And I actually based it entirely like the one of the characters or the main characters completely based on a guy I know. And I didn't tell him until I asked him to proofread the story.
Did he notice? Or
He
yeah.
yeah he noticed, and he thought it was really fun. I mean, he's a good guy, so but he
Yeah.
thought it was really funny, and I guess you put in a person's strengths as well as their flaws.
As their weaknesses. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and luckily he's well aware of them. He's well aware of his
Right.
flaws,
Yeah.
so that wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. That works.
But so 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 yeah, you got everything kickstarted, and that's how that whole process. And since then,
Yeah.
you're working on
Since then,
what?
I've been working on it. So it's been almost 4 years. I I grossly underestimated the time it would take, and I thought it would take about a year. And my life is just way too complicated for that right now. So, I'm a single dad,
Mm,
and um, just busy, busy. And so, and I need to work too. So, uh, it's taken longer than I thought, and the book ended up being longer. The
mm,
first draft was 140,000 words, and it's getting trimmed down quite a bit as I edit. So it's at about 115 now. It'll probably be at about 110
mm.
when it's done. So, which is still a pretty good length novel. So,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah. So, and I've been very meticulous, like in um, my editing lately. So I want to get like 3 chapters edited a day, and it's coming out to like more like one every
Mm.
other day, or something, because I have other things I need to get done too. I have other obligations, and it's just I want the prose to be really good. In this draft, I'm really going through and just trying to polish up the prose as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And make sure everything is consistent. And I'm finding, but it's good because I'm going through it fast enough that I'm seeing the inconsistencies, and I can fix them and keep going. So
Yeah. If
yeah.
anything, that's a running theme through this like these podcasts as well, is like how do you balance like real life with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
writing, because
yeah,
we all have a dream of being maybe able to support ourselves in the writing. None of us is Stephen King at this moment where we can do that, and we can put out books that nobody edits because they're too afraid to. But so how do you find? I mean, you were talking about the complications. What kind of tricks do you use?
Well, I mean, the kind of things I am trying to make it as a writer, and I know it'll probably take a little bit of time, but I've learned how to build up my audience. So I've been building my platform a lot, getting a bigger audience. Mostly that has to do with building the most important thing is building my mailing list,
Mm,
because your mailing list is your direct connection to people. It's not, there's no intermediary, and they have to give you permission. So these are people who have said, yes, you can email me.
mm,
And they're the people who are most likely to actually buy your books. So I've been building that up. I've been also building up my Twitter and doing my blog. But ultimately, my hope with those, is kind of build a relationship with people, and then hopefully they'll want to sign up for the newsletter, and then they'll get the information about my books as well as information about my blog posts and all those things.
yeah.
Um, I also like doing YouTube videos and podcasting, but that's been very difficult on my current computer. It's just a dual processing. It's got a dual processor, so it's not like a quad, and it's 4.5 years old. So it's having a problem with like I want to use XSplit Broadcaster,
Okay.
and I've used that, and that always just completely slows everything down to the point where I'll be recording on it, and on XSplit itself, my voice and video are out of sync.
Okay.
and it's like I want to be able to do so much with it, and I know it can do so much, but I need a new computer. So currently I'm waiting for my tax returns, return money, at which point I will be able to go get a new computer and start doing all that. Because it's been frustrating. That's one of my things I want to do this year, and we're already in March, and I still haven't been able to do that. So I'm kind of, as well as the actual book writing, I'm doing other media stuff to make money and to kind of bring people in. So, and I'm also trying to get my Patreon, built up. So I'm kind of hoping that in like a few months, when my book is published, I'll start seeing some decent money from that, and from Patreon, and from like my YouTube videos. So all together. So, and I just want to keep building all of it up.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting, because that's kind of going into my next question, basically, because you wanted to talk to you about your writing, but also about building a brand.
Yes.
Because that's basically what we're trying to do in this day and age. It's easier to build a brand than being that writer or school teacher who writes in the evenings and sends out manuscripts. Like we read in on Stephen King's Wikipedia page that he did.
Yeah.
But it's a different day and a different age. What do you think? What is your solution to it? Is it just being there, being consistent, and putting out product?
Yeah, it's being consistent. Yeah, and giving people a reason building a relationship with people. So that like they come to my blog or website or whatever because there's stuff there that's in it for them.
Yeah.
And then so they learn to trust me because I'm sharing information with them, which I like doing. I like doing that anyway. I just so it works for me. So they'll see that I've got lots of cosplay pattern reviews, and and because I like to I started interviewing cosplayers and talking about some cosplay patterns, and then the company McCall's contacted me and said, hey, we're doing, you have talked about our cosplay line before. Would you like to, work with us on that, and we'll send you patterns and then you review them. I'm like, sure. So I'm doing that. So that's really fun. Even though I can't sew, but maybe someday I'll have a, partner who can, and we'll get to cosplay together or something. But,
well, in the end, it's those little things that get you, that foot in the door somehow.
Yeah. So I'm getting people people like to read that, or they read my interviews with writers or cosplayers or makers, or just me like talking about current steampunk stuff, and then they, kind of or watch my, podcast or something, and so they kind of get to know who I am, and then they want to sign up for the newsletter, and then they're interested in my books.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I've learned. That's kind of how I've learned to build it. I'm trying to kind of learn how to get more people onto my mailing list. Because it does take time. It takes a long time to build. But my Twitter though is huge. I've got like 46,000 followers.
Mm-hmm. Right now. That's a goodly number.
Yeah. So that helps too. And I'm making relationships there too. So.
And then I've noticed now, because I've been active with this for a couple of years, and I've noticed that all of a sudden, once you go out there and you start following certain things, you're starting to talk about certain things. There are certain authors or businesses or people that pop up in everybody's Twitter feed. I saw it was the same with you. There's a couple of things there on your blog that I recognized.
Oh, in the advertising, you mean, or just on my?
No, I think there were a couple of things. I think there were writing tips. I think Rain Hall's.
Oh yeah. Excuse me. Yeah.
And it says
like the Rain Hall is a big one, and she actually, I would recommend her books because she's got a series called I think it's called Writer's Craft.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's got a lot of books in that series, and they are about all sorts of aspects of writing, but she writes for people who are already at an intermediate to advanced level.
Mm.
So if you're at a level where you're going, I want to improve my writing, and I know I'm getting better, but I've been writing for a long time, and all the tips I'm finding are things I already know.
Yeah.
Pick up some of her books because she will help you go to the next level.
Fighting scenes always been, I think, my weakness. I can't.
Oh, fighting scenes?
I
She's
can't.
got a book of fighting scenes. Yeah.
I can't figure out fighting scenes for the life of me because I just feel like I repeat the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And then he thrust his sword and he parried, and I just I definitely need, because I know that she has a writing or like a fighting scene.
Yeah, get her fight scene book. It's good. I've read most of it.
Mm-hmm.
I got to finish it. That's one of the ones I got to finish. So, yeah, no, that's a really good one.
Okay.
That's a good one. She'll definitely help. She'll definitely help with that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you got to that point in podcast episode 2 where I interview Brett Savary about creativity, because I've been trying to identify that creative people, or some of us as creative people, have like this kinetic energy within us that we want to get it out, and if we can't get it out, we'll take it out in other ways, like make up stories about people or whatever that can be very damaging. Brett wasn't being a heavy metal drummer. He said he got his energy out in a different way. I believe I asked Eric Scott Fischel the same thing, and he couldn't really identify. He had a very pragmatic way of writing from episode 1. He basically I had this story, I wrote it.
Okay.
Didn't feel to be as struggling as some of us are when writing. Yeah. Is that the same? What is true for you?
Well, I think you kind of touched on a couple different things there. So, as far as like creativity, yeah, I mean, I need to be creative. I need to do creative things. So when I kind of gave writing a break for a while because I got really frustrated with publishing at the time, and the way it used to be where you're submitting to lots of places, or even if you're already self-published, the marketing end of it is really tough.
Yeah.
And now I finally kind of learned a lot of how to do that correctly, and I'm actually building my platform. But I didn't. I wish I had known years and years ago, but I didn't know. And so I just I didn't know how to market myself, and so I got frustrated with it, and I started doing artwork and 3D artwork instead. But I mean, I had to go to something else creative. I couldn't just not do anything. I think of like a life of having just like a job, and that's all a job that's not creative, and that's all you do.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, no, I have to do something creative too. I can't just it'd be, in order to have a job and then the rest of my time I'm able to just kind of enjoy myself more, then the job has to be something really creative. That is something I really want to do. So that's like I think with lots of other authors, that's why I want to just be a writer. And actually I am. I mean, my day job is I'm a copywriter for my day job. So that's definitely better than a lot of other jobs would be, because I'm writing. So, and so my entire business is writing. But at some point, yeah, I mean, I would like to just write, books and stories and do videos and make my living that way. But yeah, like you're saying, I have to do something creative. So there was another part of that. Oh, and then you kind of got into how you know someone who can just he had his story idea and he just wrote it.
Yeah, it was in episode 1 of this podcast. I talked to Eric Scott Fischel, and that's how, because I was talking to him about his process of writing, and he basically had, I had a couple of viable story ideas, and I chose the one that I thought was the best, and I just wrote it.
Okay.
And to me, that's kind of amazing. For somebody like me, I think I struggle at times to find the time to just sit and write something.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of like the two different things. He didn't really have that kind of creative I mean, he was creative. That not to take that away from him because his book, Doctor
Uh-huh.
Potter's Medicine Show, is an amazing book. It really is. But just that way of working does not work for me.
That he just sat down and wrote.
Yeah.
I need to, yeah, I need, I do definitely have a process that I've developed, and I partly learned from other writers, but mostly developed on my own. Which is that like, if I'm gonna, I mean, I guess this goes for short stories as well as books, but I guess I'll kind of like with a novel, I'll kind of, I've got to have, I've got all the characters, or I've got to come up with the characters, obviously, and the situation, and then I might have like an idea of where I want the story to go. And so, like what I did with Bodacious Creed, I kind of outlined the whole thing. But it changed a lot as it went because the way I really like to write is um, I need to figure out what's going to happen in a scene or a chapter before I write the chapter.
Hmm.
And the way I do that is I think about the characters and what they would do and what they wouldn't do and what they want and what they'll do to get it. So mainly going by the characters' motivations and what those particular characters would do, and how they, and then seeing, okay, well, if he's doing this and she's doing this, they're going to clash,
Hmm.
and finding the conflicts and stuff. And then so then I can outline the chapter, and what I do now, and this I sort of developed while working on Bodacious Creed, is I'll actually talk it out. I'll open up Dragon Naturally Speaking,
Hmm.
and I'll talk out is what I think will happen in the chapter, or what I plan to have happen, and I'll like go, okay, well, he would do this, but then she would react that way, and then she would do this and this, and I go, oh, wait a minute, no, they wouldn't do that, and so I'll actually like I basically just kind of brainstorm it or workshop it by myself with that, and then and then the way I was doing is then I was talking it out and then actually writing the chapter by also dictating it. But now I prefer to type the chapter because there are just too many errors that come in when you're talking it out anyway. And for me, talking it out isn't necessarily a faster because I still need to think about how I want to say things.
Mm.
And I already type 90 words a minute, so I'm good there. Um,
Yeah, I was trying to do that. I had like an idea, and I
uh,
thought like because I'll be like that because I work at a school, and I can get ideas while I'm at school, and I don't have the ability or the time to sit and type it down or write it down or take notes like I did when I used to work at a gas station where in the evenings when it was dead,
yeah,
then I could just take like a post-it note,
yeah,
write it down. And I can't do that, so I was hoping like, oh, what if I record it? I'll just go into this room for a sec and I'll record it, or I'll record it on the drive home.
uh,
But I just couldn't get it. It would never sound as good spoken as the idea that I had in my head. So,
yeah,
so I just figured that actually it was better just to have it in my head, try to keep it there, and process it during the day until I could get home and work it out.
yeah,
And half of the time it works out, and half of the time you forget.
and it doesn't. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so that's how it
So,
is. Um, but
but I have. Oh God.
no, no, no. Take what you.
I really have to think out my characters' motivations a lot and what they'll do, and sometimes I'll come up with one thing. And one thing I've learned that I read in the book, you probably heard of it, How to Write a Damn Good Novel by James N. Frey.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
I
he
haven't
talks
read it
about
actually, but
it's really good. He talks about how your characters should be working at their maximum capacity
mm,
as fictional characters. Um, so I'll have an idea that a character will do this one certain thing, and then I'll realize that there's a lot better idea of what they should do, and so sometimes I'll have to like change things to and like I want to have them do the smarter thing,
mm,
that they would do that they would think of too, um, and those are the things I think that often kind of I think it's that thinking through those things and coming up with the best thing that often will surprise readers or make it seem like as a writer you're really on it you know. But I have to really think everything through. And then if I'm reading somebody else's writing, and a character does something that I think that there's a better choice that they would have probably thought of and done, then
Mm,
it bugs me.
yeah. Yeah.
You know.
I have a hard time doing that. I've recently tried to use, or I do use Scrivener actually because
Yeah, I use Scrivener too.
because I like that, and I also use an app actually for Google called WriteWell, which works not in a very different way than Scrivener does.
Okay.
But the thing was that with Scrivener was for the first time I worked in a way with plot outlines for every chapter or for every scene, which I usually don't do. But now I've done that. Now I kind of have like this needs to happen in this chapter,
Yeah.
but very little about who is going to do it or who's going to do what, because for me the characters have to make the story themselves while I write it. I have to
Yeah.
have that free form. I can't and that's actually I can't have total control of the story.
Right.
They have to have
Exactly.
control of the story. That brings about a few problems, like, oh, this story is set in like a Bosnian village type setting
Uh-huh.
circa 1800. What do people look like then?
Yeah.
So then I actually have to stop my process and start looking that up.
And research. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a big flaw. I can't research first because then I lose the story.
Well, one thing you can do is put a note in there. If the way that they look is going to be important and is going to determine how things go down in the story,
Hmm.
then you might have to find it right away. If, however they look, the story is still going to be the story,
Yeah.
you just want to get that detail right, then put in notes, look up how Bosnian people looked in 1800, and then keep going.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Put it in parentheses and in capitals, and then come back to it.
Well, that's good. That's a good tip.
Yeah, so that's something I've learned.
Yeah.
Like, if there's something you don't know, but you got to keep going with the story, if there's some detail like that, put in a thing, okay, and then keep going.
Mm.
So, and then when you come back on the next draft, you'll find it and you can fix it.
Yeah. I think we kind of wind down. We're gonna wind down now. We've been talking for quite some time,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's been good. It's been a good talk. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. It's been a nice chat. Just before we go, what's next for you? You're gonna finish your story, and then what's gonna happen? Are you going to self-publish it, or are you gonna bring it out to the masses through a publishing agent? What are you gonna try to do?
I'm doing my own publicity anyway, and you have to do your own publicity anyway. So I'm a very firm believer in self-publishing. Um, and of course, with self-publishing, you want to make sure that everything is edited really well. So
Yeah.
the good thing is, my uncle has been very supportive of this book since I started it, and he's really interested in it. He's been one of my beta readers.
Okay.
He's been my best beta reader. So he's reading it. He read the whole second draft, and he's reading this final draft as I go, and checking me on things. So if there's an inconsistency that he sees, he'll let me know. If there's, if something's misspelled or something, he'll mark it. And then like I said, I'm gonna go through it and I'm gonna read it out loud.
Yeah.
After I finish this draft, I'm gonna read it aloud to catch things, and then I'm gonna do that again.
Okay.
So that should get it pretty clean. That should get, between the two of us and me doing that. And then I'm going to publish it and market the hell out of it. So, and then after that, I plan to write several more short stories in the world, in the Bodacious Creed world. And then I plan to write the sequel.
Okay.
So, yeah. And once I get the new computer, I actually one thing I plan to do on my YouTube channel, I want to get my steampunk podcast going again, and I've also started a writing tips series.
Okay.
So where I'll do these short, like 3 to 5 or 3 to 10 minute videos, really, but giving kind of tips for writers, so that people can go there quickly and find some ideas. So, writers are always looking for tips. So
Obviously.
Writing long enough, I got a million of them. So I'm thinking of doing like 2 of those a week and trying to do 2 blog posts a week, and that's of course in addition to my day job. So it's kind of a lot. So that's what I want to accomplish, and I'm going to do my best. I hope that I really can write the next Bodacious Creed book in about a year and a half, because I do want to make this a series. It's totally got the potential for it. I love the world I created and the characters. They're always surprising me. Even in rewriting, new little things come up that surprise me. So yeah. Can I ask you what you thought of the short story?
No, I liked it. When I first got it and I first read it, I thought that I was missing something because I thought it was like a prequel to the rest of it. I thought you kind of had to know the idea of it. I did enjoy it. It was kind of, I got a Westworld kind of feel. Could be because I just watched Westworld.
It's in the Wild West. So
but yeah, no, I got it. And I just read C.T. Phipps' book. It's like a Lovecraft book called Cthulhu Armageddon, which is also kind of set in the Wild West type of Cthulhu Armageddon world. So I got that idea. But it was an interesting lead in. As I understood, to what is going to come next. I think I was expecting a little bit more action, maybe, but
wait for the book.
Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be there's a lot of action in the book.
Yeah, and it made me very interested in seeing where we're going, what's going to happen next.
Okay, good.
So
yeah, the book is in some ways it'll probably give you kind of a Westworld feel too, because it can be pretty brutal.
Okay.
Or almost a Game of Thrones feel, even in some ways, with just the death. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to write this book. So, are you going to have like links for me down below, or?
I will. I was going to ask you where can people find you on the internet?
Okay, so I am at. So my website is johnfesmire.com. That's JONFESMIRE.com. If you're when you're on there for about 40 seconds or something, a subscription thing will pop up. So a little light box will come up. So I encourage you to subscribe so you can read that short story we were talking about and get a kind of a preview into the world of Bodacious Creed. And also, that's where people will get to see, when the book comes out. This is kind of the best place to be, because you're sure to get an email.
Yeah.
Letting you know it's out.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I do encourage people to sign up for my newsletter. I send out a lot of. I basically every couple blog posts I'll send out an email saying what's there and maybe just sharing a little more information if I think of it. I'm also on Twitter at Fesmire. I don't even know how my name got doubled, but it did. So that's my Twitter handle. And that Fesmire is FESMIRE. So it's at Fesmire. If you want to follow me on Twitter, on YouTube, you can find me as the Wild Steampunk.
Okay.
And those are the main spots.
Yeah, we'll post that in the links as well in the show notes.
Okay.
And it'll be fun. We'll look forward to the book coming out. I'll be waiting for that email.
Good. Yeah. Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on when it comes out, we'll see how long it'll take for us to review it. But we have a review list that is lengthy.
Okay.
But I think
I did send you the first 26 chapters.
Yeah. I'll get a head start.
Yeah. So if you want to read, when you put this up, if you want to. If you find an excerpt in there you want to read that doesn't give too much away, but that is interesting, that would be awesome, too. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks. Well, guys, that was the show. Once again, thank you for listening in. It was a great talk. Check out Jonathan Fesmire on all his social medias. We'll post them, of course, in the show notes. It was nice for you to stop in and listen to us. Remember, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, on our website, on Instagram. All those things will be on the show notes. Also, just want to do an extra little shout out for the Wrestling Guild, where myself and Nick Abtahi talk about wrestling. More importantly, just talk about Impact Wrestling. So check that out. All those links are in the show notes, as I said. You guys have a great day. See you next time.